Cheide.
For this 3-minute rules, we will be looking at the rules for panic and panic tests. All of this can be found on pages 62 and 63 of the large 8th edition rulebook. Panic deals with the psychology of warriors. Faced with allies and comrades being slain at the hands of the foe, you may find that your warriors scatter and leave the battlefield rather than fight on. In Warhammer, we cover these situations and the likelihood of them occurring with the rules for panic. A panic test is simply a leadership test, as described already on page 10. If the test is passed, everything is fine, but if the test is failed, the unit will immediately flee, as described here. It's important to note that a unit only needs to take one panic test in each phase. So in the movement phase, or the magic phase, or the shooting phase, or the close combat phase. Even if there are multiple reasons to take panic tests in a single phase. So only one panic test per phase. Most panic tests are taken immediately, and if you have 2 or more units that need to take panic tests, you as the controlling player get to decide which unit takes the first panic test, followed by which unit takes the next, and so on and so forth. It is worth noting, however, that there are 3 circumstances under which even the most cowardly of units are not forced to take panic tests. First, a unit does not take panic tests if it is in close combat. The immediate fray blots out all other events going on around them. So for example, neither this unit of dwarves nor this unit of dwarves would need to take a panic test if something happened around here that would trigger it. They are both in combat at this point. Second, a unit does not take a panic test if that unit is already fleeing. Fear has already lent wings to these warriors. The prospect of further jeopardy does not accelerate their flight. So for example, let's say that these high elves destroyed this unit of warriors. These guys over here, the Thunderers, are already fleeing, so they would not have to take an additional panic test. And third, remember that a unit does not take a panic test if it has already passed one earlier in the phase. So if we are in the magic phase and this unit has already passed their panic test with a roll of 6, they do not need to take another panic test or another one to be triggered in the same magic phase. Let's take a look now at some of the situations and circumstances under which it is most common to take a panic test. Heavy casualties. A unit must take a panic test immediately if it loses 25% or more of the models with which it started the phase. So for the sake of argument, let's use this example that the Prince on Griffin in the magic phase uses a spell to attack the Thunderers, and the Thunderers then take 3 wounds, so 3 of their models are killed. 3 models is therefore 30% of the number of models that they began this magic phase with, and thereby they need to roll a panic test with a leadership of 9. And with a 3, they pass. Typically, this test will most commonly be taken as a result of shooting attacks or damage caused by enemy spells, but it can also be triggered by other factors that cause casualties, such as miscasts, misfires, dangerous terrain tests, or other special rules. Rather than having a series of very specific triggers for a panic test, we use this as a catch-all to cover units that suffer high casualties for any reason. High casualty panic tests need to be taken even if a unit is charging and another unit is standing and shooting, and the standing and shooting unit causes more than 25% casualties. So in this example, were the Thunderers over here able to stand and shoot at the charging high elf warriors? If those warriors suffered more than 25% damage in their unit, they would immediately have to take a panic test while they are charging. Sometimes this rule can lead to the situation in that the charging unit is panicking while it's still technically out of range of the enemy unit's missile weapons, and that can be a little bit odd. Under these circumstances, we assume the charging unit to have been shot at as soon as it entered the range, panicked, and then fled out of range again. So for the sake of this example, let's say that the Thunderers to the right have only a 12-inch range for their stand and shoot, and that they're able in fact to stand and shoot. Let's say that they do in fact cause 25% casualties. This is how this will look. The high elves will come into the range and immediately flee once they get to that 12-inch range. Another case for a panic test is when a nearby friend has been annihilated. If a unit is destroyed for any reason, all friendly units within 6 inches must immediately test for panic. So for example, were this unit of Dwarf Thunderers to be completely annihilated, this unit of warriors would immediately need to take a panic test because they are within 6 inches of where this unit was annihilated. Another case is when a nearby friend breaks. If a unit breaks from close combat, all friendly units within 6 inches must immediately test for panic. So in this case, the Dwarf Thunderers are breaking from this combat with the High Elves, and therefore these warriors within 6 inches must make a test for panic. And finally, Fled Through. A unit must immediately test for panic if fleeing friends move through it. So in this case, we have the Dwarf Thunderers who are fleeing from this combat with the High Elves, and they are heading directly towards the warriors. Let's roll for their flee distance. And they will flee 5 inches. Five inches brought them into this unit, making them pop through them 1 inch here, as is the rules for fleeing through other units. In this case, this unit has now been fled through by a friendly unit that is breaking, and it will have to take a panic test. Of course, this is the most destructive form of panic, as one unit can panic and flee through another unit, which in turn might panic and flee through a further unit, and so on until your whole battle line is reduced to tatters. And with that, we come to the conclusion of this 3-minute rules on panic and panic tests. Thank you for joining us here today at Grey Army Gaming for the future of fantasy.